Hi everyone, I'm Pavel Shukman and today I'm going to present upgraded version of Reliza Hub tutorial 2021 edition. Bear with me.
Let me start by briefly explaining what Reliza Hub does and what I'm going to demonstrate later in this tutorial. So on the left side, you see our building materials, which is essentially how our continuous integration system works. So this could be Docker images, this could be jar files, this could be any software materials that are used to produce software application or bundle. So Reliza Hub is integrated with this continuous integration process by first providing versions for each of these components. And second, it records all the metadata that originates from the CI process and stores it inside Reliza Hub as database. Next thing that happens is Reliza Hub, as it allows for approvals of specific materials or bundles of materials to go to the next stages, which is usually here we have continuous delivery or continuous deployment system, which actually takes those materials and deploys them on the actual servers. So what Reliza Hub does there is this CD systems would query Reliza Hub and essentially ask, okay, what materials, what software components are actually good for my specific instance or for my specific service? And Reliza Hub would route that. So this is the basic idea beyond Reliza Hub. And in the subsequent part of the tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how we build a sample project that would do the whole process end to end, basically from building those materials to deploying on a Kubernetes cluster. Stay with me. Okay, so we start by creating our organization on Reliza Hub. Let's go to Reliza Hub website, launch the app. So from here, I will use GitHub to authenticate myself, authorize Reliza.io application. This is done. I'm going to accept terms of service and provide my email. Click submit. Okay, now I need to go to my email and confirm the verification link. Okay, now with the link verified, I'll create new organization and I'll call it Reliza Demo. Okay, all done here. Now that our organization is set up, let's go ahead and fork 3 repositories that we have for the Mafia project. One would be front-end repository, one would be back-end, and the last one would be deployment or configuration repository. So they are all located under github.com Mafia demo, and you can see 3 repositories here, and I'm just going to fork them one by one. Great. Now with all 3 are done, I'm just go ahead to Reliza Hub and set up projects for each of these repositories. You can think of projects like services. Okay, so the first project, let's do deployment or configuration project. I will use Semver version schema for all of them. We have few choices available, plus it's possible to define custom one, but we'll just use semantic versioning. Feature branch versioning will use the default one, which I usually recommend, that is branch and micro. And we need to add the source code repository. So I'll get the URL from GitHub. It would populate several parameters for me. I have submit. Okay, now our deployment project is created. I'm just going to repeat the same thing for our UI project. Semper default. And now the repository is this one. Submit. And the final one would be backend. And we'll use this repository. Submit. All done. All three projects are set up. We'll create one bundle, which would be used to combine all our three projects. And we'll just call it Mafia. And we'll also use semantic versioning here, among other possible options. The last thing we'll do, we'll create a test instance. I'll describe later what it does. This is basically would be our Kubernetes instance, actually test instance that would be used for deployment. So I'll call it mafia.dev, and I'll actually use dev environment. So you see there are several options, and it's also possible to create a new environment here. Okay, so submit. Our instance is created. It's empty now. No deployments, nothing is recorded, but we'll get to this later. One more thing we need is storage for our Docker images and Helm charts. We could use some tooling like Docker Hub, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we would use Registry, which is built into Reliza Hub. And now I'm going to activate it. I'll just go to Settings, and then we'll click on Enable Organization Registry, which would provide me with the URI of registries I can use. You can notice one is private and one is public. I will use public one for this tutorial. And also you see some commands for Helm charts, how we can push Helm charts. We will use those later. One more thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a key. I'm going to use a key to create a key to connect to the registry. So we will use public registry. So I'll choose this one, generate. And you see this is my username and token. Note that this information needs to be confidential. It just like all the keys I'm showing, I'm going to rotate right after this tutorial. So they'll be not valid by the time that you'll see the video. But for now, I'm just going to copy this information and we'll use it later in the tutorial. My next step would be to set up my repository secrets for all of my forks repositories. So I'll start with the deployment one. So we go to settings, and here we have secrets. And here I'll just keep adding new repository secrets. So we need a few. The first one would be called Helm push login. That would be the credential we just created that I copied out. So that would be my login. Another one would be Helm push token. And again, I'll copy out the value. One more we need here is actually the actual URI for our Helm charts. We'll call it Helm chart repo. And for the actual value, I'll go to Reliza Hub and we'll find it here. So we'll use the public URI, so we'll use this one. So So this tutorial is configured in such a way that I need slash in the end. So I'll add secret. There are two more that we need here. Those would be Reliza Hub secrets to communicate with the project. So to generate them, I'll need to go to projects page, find my deployment project, and click here to generate project API key and ID. So generated. Okay, so now I can create secrets based on those. The first will be called Reliza API ID. This is the value. And the second one is Reliza API key. And again, we'll use this value. Okay, so that's done. So now if you're wondering actually how those secrets are wired, I'll show the code here. So if we go to code, there is like a GitHub workflows directory, and you see the Reliza YAML file. So you can see that those secrets are actually wired in this file in generic form, and that's how they are used. And similarly here we have a definition to actually push Helm charts. So that's essentially how that's done. So I'll quickly do similar thing for two other projects that we have. So let's do the UI project. Again, settings, secrets, new repository secret. So for UI project, we already don't need the Helm chart, but we still need the API ID and key. So I'll start from those one. Reliza API ID, and I need to generate those. So UI project, generate. So that would be my key, my ID, and now my key. Added secrets, so those are added. So now I need the Docker login and Docker token, which would be credentials which would be used to push Docker images. They are the same as the registry repositories. So that would be my login and now token. So that's done. So now I need image namespace and name. Again, this is for pushing Docker images. Since we're using Reliza Hub registry, I can find, I'll use the public namespace and name. So this would be my public image namespace. I'll use this one. And the image name is actually up to me. I can define whatever I want. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I will use Mafia view like this. Okay, I should have 6 secrets in total. That's correct. So the last one I need to do is setting up secrets for backend Express project. Okay, that's done. Now I have all the secrets needed for all repositories. Just a quick note, depending on CI system, it's possible to combine some secrets. So define it in only one place. Like if you have an organization account for GitHub Actions, or let's say in Jenkins, you would define it only once. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we keep it simple and define it like this. My next step would be to enable GitHub Actions run. I have to do it because those are forked repositories, and trigger builds first for UI and backend projects. So I'll start with my backend projects. I will go to Actions, enable my Actions workflows. So I need to click here. Okay, perfect. And now I need to do similar thing for my UI repository. Okay, that's also done. So now what I need to do, I need to trigger some builds to make sure my images are published. So the easiest thing to do that is just to commit something. So usually the way I do it, I just create a file called trigger build, and I just say number 1, and I commit it like this, chore trigger build. So let me commit this file. So now this should trigger actions run. So let's see how this one goes. I hope it works, even though it's recorded demo, it's kind of live for me, so I hope it works. If not, we'll actually debug it live. I think that progresses correctly so far. By the way, the interesting thing happens here. You see it actually calls Reliza to get version in this action. So the version is managed by Reliza Hub. And you can see that this is actually the version information that we're using, which is cool. By the way, it has this GitHub metadata, which can be turned on and off in Reliza Hub. That's one of the features we have there. Okay, so while it's being pushed, I'll actually go ahead and trigger another build in the UI repository. So similar thing. So I already enabled the workflow. Go to code here. And let me add a file called trigger build. And again, I'll put there just one, and I'll just trigger this build and commit. Oh, it already exists here in this repository, so instead I'll just update it. Yeah, trigger build is here, so I'll just edit, and I'll switch it to 3. Okay, oh, some weird encoding here for some reason. It's still just trigger build here, commit. Okay, you see the action started here. Let's see this one. So a bit of time passed, and you can see that my backend express build is complete. It's great, so everything worked out well here. However, my UI build completed with an error. So I did some investigation, and apparently it's not passing Docker Registry token. And I went to secrets and realized I made an error here, so I misspelled Docker token. So I'm going to recreate this secret. I'm going to remove this one, create another one with the correct name. Okay, and I'm going to paste the value, which is this one. Okay, and now from actions, I can actually go ahead and I think I should be able to restart this failed build. Yeah, rerun all jobs. So I'll just restart that. Okay, so while it's running, we'll work a little bit on deployment repository. So this one a little different. And the thing we need to do here is we'll be deploying from the Helm chart. And in Helm chart, we need to update our values to the repository that relates to our specific project, like fork that we created for our organizations. So I need to edit this file and use the correct image namespace and name here. And I can find the namespace here. So I'll update those values. And I'll just use latest. I don't need the digest here. Reliza will actually, Reliza Hub tools will actually set digest for me on deployment. I'll describe this later. For now, I'll just use this registry from Reliza Hub. Okay, we'll remove digest here. Everything else seems good. So I'm just going to commit that. Sure. Update values file to correct image locations. Commit. Yeah, and I just realized for this one, I think I forgot to enable the workflow, so I'll enable my GitHub actions. And now I apparently I need to trigger build again, so I'll create a trigger build file just to trigger the actions build, trigger build. And I'll put it to 1. So chore trigger build and commit. Okay, so this actually triggered actions run. Let's see now my UI build is completed. So my backend build is done, UI build is done, my Helm chart build is going. While it's going, let's go to Reliza Hub and see what we have here. So you see for backend project, we already have our first build succeeded here. If we go to components, we can see the source code reference, which would bring us to commit the triggered build, and we can see the Docker image that was created. And you see you have like the SHA-256 digest here. So this is the one that will be actually resolved to by Reliza Hub. So this is great. Similar for UI build, we have a successful build here, which is awesome. Completed. Very nice. So both of the builds are in. Let's look at our deployment workflow. Seems created. If we go to deployment, yeah, perfect. We already have this build completed as well. And you see this one contains a Helm chart. So all our prerequisites are done. It's time to actually set up a deployment on Kubernetes cluster. So first of all, I'm going to open my blog post, which actually lists commands that I need to use on my Kubernetes cluster. Generally, this blog post describes this tutorial, the actions I did so far. So essentially, we already prepared our instance on Reliza Hub, and those are commands I need to do on my cluster. So I will use, so I'll just copy that. There are a few things I'll actually need to change there. So Yeah, I'll start here, and I will use my K3s cluster. So I'll start here. Okay, so I'll create namespaces first, Mafia tutorial, and realize a CD. So that is done. So now the next command, I need to create a secret, deployment secret. So you see it has several parameters. So first is instance API ID. So let me obtain that first. So I'll go back to my browser, my instance. Okay, so that's the instance I created, mafia.dev, and I'll generate API key for that. So this is what I'm going to use as my instance secret. So that would be my instance API ID here, and API key would go here. Let me just copy that. Okay, so that would be my key. And one more thing, here is I need the project ID for my deployment project. So that deployment project, this is actually Mafia deployment project, which is found here. And I need this UUID of this project. So I click here to copy it. And I just pasted the ID in here. Perfect, so my secret is created. So the next thing, so I created namespaces, I created secret. So now let's create the config map. So config map, just to explain, it defines the namespace, Mafia tutorial. Helm release name is Mafia, which essentially would be the release name that's used by Helm command because we're deploying it via Helm. And also we defined base values file, and this is just values.yaml. Why it's called base is because what Reliza Hub is going to do, it's going to update the actual images in the file to the definitions specified by Reliza Hub. Okay, so we create this config map. And a few more steps here. So those are actually commands that would, definitions that would trigger our Helm CD. So note that it's possible to use Argo CD or generally any CD tool here, but for simplicity, we use this simple Helm Reliza CD to do the deployment. Okay, this is done. And the last thing is role binding. Okay, this is done. And just now we just need to wait for our CD thing to trigger. Let's check our namespace. Not yet. I think we have a cron job there that triggers every other minute, so we need to wait a bit. You see a bit of time passed, and now I have my cron job running. Okay, it's completed. Let's now check my Mafia tutorial namespace. Okay, perfect. You see we got our builds deployed. Last thing here is we're going to deploy Reliza Watcher that would stream information about what is actually deployed on our cluster in our namespace and stream this metadata to Reliza Hub. And then we can do interesting things with it. So for example, we can bundle up releases. So I'll show those possibilities a little later. For now, I'll just go to my tutorial and get commands for Reliza Watcher. So first we put it in its own namespace. So we create namespace for Reliza Watcher. Then we need to create a secret for it. Oh, sorry, that was a bit too much. So I need to set up instance API ID, which would be actually the same ID like the last time. And API key. Okay, secret is created. Okay, next we need to create config map. Okay, so it copied automatic, but essentially in the config map we specified that our namespace, so we will watch the namespace Mafia tutorial, and the name of our sender would be default. So the watcher can watch actually several namespaces, but in our case, we only want to focus on this Mafia tutorial one. So that's all good here. And the last thing, we're just going to apply the actual script for the watcher. Okay, didn't copy correctly. We'll do it one more time. Okay, this will be the script created. Now we need to wait a bit of time. And from here, we just need to go back to Reliza Hub. And in Reliza Hub, we go to instances. And we see actually that our instance now contains all those releases that are deployed. And we can check the exact artifact that's deployed and point to exact source code. And also it tells us that we actually have Redis deployed with this version, which was in our manifest, but that's a third-party project. It also shows the version of the Mafia deployment project that hosts the Helm chart that we're using. So again, we know the exact Helm chart that is actually deployed on this project with a reference to commit. So this is essentially our deployment. So the next or maybe the last thing that I'm going to show is I'll show how we can bundle up those releases. So you remember we created this bundle here previously. So now I'm going to assign this bundle to this instance in its base feature set. So feature set and bundles are like branch and project. And we'll use the integrate type to indicate that in this instance may create new bundles. And yeah, the namespace is Mafia tutorial that we're going to use. So submit. So you see the bundle is here. Now to create the first bundle, I just need to click on this generate button here. And you see automatically we have now this first bundle, which captures all the components that are deployed. So now the next time the new deployment happens to this instance, the bundle would be auto-generated. I'm just going to demonstrate that. I'm going to go to my, for example, UI project. And in this UI project, I'm going to trigger a new build. So I'll just increment the number in our trigger build file without doing much else. And I'll trigger this build and commit. So this is going to trigger the GitHub Actions workflow, which is going to produce a new artifact. And then automatically, after a bit of time, this new artifact will be deployed to our Kubernetes cluster, and this information will be submitted to Reliza Hub and get here. So while we're waiting, I'll describe a few more features that we put in recently. One of them is actually the auto-integrate functionality. So it is now possible to configure bundle to automatically integrate components. Right now, we're still using manual integration. That means that all the releases that get deployed to this instance, they automatically form a bundle. But in the latest Reliza Hub, we now have opportunity to do it actually automatically, and so we don't need this. We don't have to use this integration instance anymore. I'm just showing that this opportunity is available for demo. So let me check the GitHub Actions workflow. Still running, so we'll wait a little bit more time. The wait is now over. You can see that the build just completed. So again, we can go to Reliza Hub, go to projects, and there would be UI project, and you can see that this is a new build that's just created. Again, it matched to a source code entry, specific git commit that relates to this build. So now the deployment already happened actually in the background, but I'll show you it in a bit. And you see that it shows that this build is part of Mafia 00.1 bundle, and it's deployed on my Mafia dev instance. And again, it has this artifact information, which is the exact SHA-256 digest of the Docker image that relates to this build, this version. Let's check our instance. Yeah, we can see that automatically the next bundle version is created, which is 001. That this bundle is now changed. So the deployment happened, and again, you can check the exact artifact that's running for each build, and you can check the actual git commit running for every project. Interesting thing is we also have instance history here. So all the changes that happened on the instance are recorded, and you can actually go ahead and view what has changed. So in this case, you can see that the deployment has changed from 000 to 001. And the next thing that happened is the new bundle was generated. So the new bundle was generated for this deployment. So Reliza Hub at any single point of time gives us this nice overview, what exactly is deployed. It actually automatically provisions those bundles. And the interesting part that we can create new instances. And if we create a new instances, we can set up certain approval policies that would route specific bundles or specific releases to those new instances. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to briefly show how this is going to work. So first, let's imagine that we would have now a new environment. Let's let it be a test environment, and we would require dev approval for bundles to get to test environment. So in the settings page, in the approval matrix, we just checkbox test environment and dev approval, and we save our matrix saved. Now we go back to instances, and let's say we add now mafia.test instance, and this would belong to test environment. Submit, so the new instance is created. So first thing I'll do here, I'll switch the deployment type to bundled deployment. So that's done. And now I'm going to allocate our Mafia bundle to this instance, and integration type would be follow. That means that it would follow the approvals given on the releases. And we'll just keep the default namespace because it's a generic instance that I'm using for tutorial. So you see currently actual is not matched and target is not set. What does this mean? It means there is no target for this instance. The reason there is no target is because there are actually no bundle releases that we have with approvals that we need. Let's just go ahead and approve our current bundle for test release. So for this, we go to approvals here and save approvals. This is now done. And so now if we go to our test instance, you see that the target now changed to 00.1, which is great, which actually means that when this instance would pull definitions that need to go to this instance from Reliza Hub, this would correspond to bundle 00.1. I have another tutorial which actually shows the workflow, and you can always reach out to me for a private demo, and I'll be very happy to present and describe those details.
This is everything that I wanted to demonstrate today. Thank you very much for watching. It was my pleasure. As I just mentioned, if you have questions or would like to discuss some details or would like to see specialized demo, feel free to go to relizahub.com and book a private demo with me. It would be great to discuss those things on a private call and conversation. Meanwhile, if you feel like you're ready to start with Reliza Hub, you can head to relizahub.com and start building your project absolutely for free. We have two first seeds absolutely free. So for smaller projects or if you're just trying the tool out, there is no obligation to pay. It's completely free. So I hope you enjoyed what you just saw, and we're going to expand and develop the tool a lot in the coming months and in 2022. So follow our channel, subscribe, and we'll have more demos, more tutorials, and more stuff that can help. Also, don't forget to join our Discord community channel, which is Discord DevOps and Data Ops. This is a specialized channel for DevOps, Data Ops professionals that we curate. It's not limited to Reliza Hub. You can ask any questions from the field and I'll try to respond or somebody else would respond. But also if you have questions regarding Reliza Hub, it will also be my pleasure to help you there. So again, thank you very much for watching. It was great having you and see you next time. Thank you.